Welcome to Colorado Inns, presented by CTV. Tonight we are joined by a few Fort Collins community members to discuss recent news. But first, Kari joins us to talk about the rain today.
Fort Collins definitely experienced some different weather today. We saw highs in the upper 50s and low 60s at some points. Gray skies and rain was a large part of the day and will be for the rest of Fort Collins for the rest of the night. However, tonight those showers will start to wane off and we'll only see about a 10% chance. The sun will be back out tomorrow with a high near 68 degrees and a slight breeze from the southeast. Today, parts of Fort Collins saw as little as 0.28 inches of rain, and others saw as much as 1.26 in the last 24 hours. So here to talk about all the implications the rain had today is Lee McDonald, a professor in the Warner College of Natural Resources. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So obviously the rain was great for parts of the summer. It was obviously really dry, but what happened here in Fort Collins?
Well, the interesting thing is the fire, the High Park fire in particular, burned for so long, and then as soon as it finished burning, it was contained on the 1st of July. On the 6th of July, we started having some substantial rainstorms, and so there was a tremendous amount of runoff and erosion pretty much all through July. We had substantial storms 6th, 7th, 8th of July, and they continued on through. So that's why the Poudre River was turning so black, and we had lots of erosion, lots of flooding over the highway. But the good side of that news is that all that water then allowed things to start growing again. So we've seen a tremendous amount of regrowth on the fire, much more than I expected compared to other fires, simply because we had a very wet July. And so while that made things very bad for the water quality and the runoff and erosion during July, it does mean that maybe next year we'll be in a little bit better shape because we'll have more green stuff growing on the hillsides, and then there'll be less runoff and erosion. So all of these rains have both a good side and a bad side. The immediate effect is negative, but the long-term effect will be beneficial.
Okay. So do you think the rain today will play into that a little bit, or do you think there was not enough rain? Or
it all depends on the intensity. You know, before a fire, all of the water will infiltrate, and so we don't have much runoff and erosion. But after a fire, as little as ½ an inch an hour of rain will cause a lot of runoff and erosion. And this rain wasn't your typical summer thunderstorm, so it wasn't quite as intense. It was a longer duration storm. But apparently in some parts of the fire, there was a fair amount of rain that did cause quite a bit of runoff. How much erosion that caused on the hill slopes, we don't know yet. The student will go out on Friday and we'll start cleaning out our sediment fences where we've been measuring erosion. And if you invite me back, then I can tell you again in a couple of days exactly what happened out there.
Okay. So what would you say the future for Colorado is for droughts and rain? And
unfortunately, I mean, we have the Fort Collins Weather Station, been here on campus for 130 years, as you know, so we have a very long-term record, and we see a very strong warming trend. So the summers are getting warmer, winters are getting warmer. That means the snow melt will be earlier, and we're seeing the peak flows in the rivers are happening a couple of weeks earlier than they used to. So that means, in effect, summer is getting longer and hotter. And if it gets longer and hotter, then the implication is that we're going to see more fires in the future. The biggest cause of fires in Colorado is really just the fact that it's drought. And if we have a very dry winter like we had in 2012, then we're going to end up with some more big fires. And unfortunately, the long-term trends are for a warming, longer, and drier summer.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thanks, Kari. Coming up, we talk to 90.5 KCSU's Michael Sacas about some controversial images. We'll be right back.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, smoky.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
An attack on the U.S. consulate in Libya on Tuesday left a U.S. ambassador dead. Chris Stevens and 3 other American officials were allegedly killed because of Libyan outrage over an anti-Islam film. The New York Post published a graphic picture of Stephen's unconscious body. Graphic images can cause controversy over whether or not to publish them. 90.5 KCSU's Michael Sacas joins us to discuss controversial images. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me here.
So tell us a little bit about your graphic images.
Well, this past summer, at the Aurora Theater shooting, we found out at the Collegian, the campus's newspaper, that a 2013 football recruit was in the theater next door to Theater 9, where the shooting had occurred. And when we found out, we needed to get a hold of him somehow. And we tried to get a hold of him through phone, through email. And then when we couldn't, I just went down there and knocked on his home's front door. And I didn't know what to expect at first because I knew that other news sources had contacted him already and that he'd already been interviewed by multiple television channels as well. So I knew that he was accepting interviews, but I didn't know if he would talk to me or not. So his mom answered the door, and she was very, very friendly, and she allowed me in, and I talked to Zach for about 45 minutes. And his story was just so powerful, I guess I could say. The fact that he was shot in the neck through the wall. So the shooter started firing, and then he was hit in the neck with stray ammunition. And it hit somewhere where not a lot of damage would occur. But if his neck had been 1 inch to the left or to the right, it could have been a completely different story. It could have hit him somewhere much more serious to cause actual damage because he was released from the hospital that day. So as I was leaving the house, I asked his mom if it was okay if I used a photo I took of friends and family that were at the house saying hello to him, and she asked me if I wanted more photos. And I said that, of course, I would appreciate anything that she would release to me. And she started flipping through her iPhone and was showing me photos of his bullet wounds before they ever bandaged them up. And I'd been doing a lot of research about the story, of course, before I went to the house. And I knew that not many news sources had actual photos of any type of wounds. And I knew that it was really important for the public to be able to see these kind of photos, to see actually what had happened. So once you released the photos to me, I decided to attach them to my story.
Okay. Why did you think these photos were important?
I think the reason I thought they were important was, for one, that they were released by the family, so I knew that I had them without having to worry that I had gotten them from a source, like it was straight from the family. So I knew that if I released them that they would be all right with it. And I think that I just wanted people to see exactly what I meant by when I was saying that he was an inch from having more serious damage done. The photos just show exactly where the wound entered and exited, and it just adds more facts, more and truthful facts to the story. So if you don't see the photographs, then I really feel that you aren't getting the true story, and it allows people to have some type of truthful visual to attach to such a horrific event.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at these pictures, and just to warn you, it is a little graphic. So we are looking at just below his earlobe?
Yeah, it entered just below his earlobe, and then it exited in two different spots when the shrapnel came out of the back.
Okay. And how did you decide to publish this picture?
I decided actually just on my own. I told my advisor that I received the photos, and we were both, I had already published them once I was able to talk with him, but he felt it was right, and I also felt it was right, and I knew that I was probably going to receive some negative comments about it, but I just really felt like since I had them and not many other news sources were deciding to either publish what they had or just had not been, fortunate enough to receive photos like this, that I just had a responsibility to release the truth behind such a gruesome event, I guess, was my thought process.
Right. And did you receive any negative feedback for publishing these pictures?
I did. I received negative feedback through mostly online. There were some comments of people saying that it was insensitive to post photos like this, and that especially with, and this was the day after the event happened, and so it was pretty close to the actual event, and people were saying, people shouldn't see these type of things. They are gruesome, they're for shock value, that they don't have any place in the news, even though, which to me doesn't, I don't know, and I don't agree with that, obviously, because I decided to publish the photos, because if you're telling the story, and I talked to Zach personally, then if you have something to go along with it, then you're already saying the story. So what's wrong with the public seeing it as well? And I think that we as people have a responsibility to be as aware as we possibly can, and to not sugarcoat these types of things, because people feel strongly about censorship, about censoring these photos from the public, when Zach is just like you, and he's just like me, and he was going to a movie one night, and he decided, and this man decided to do what he did, and I think that we should see his full story as well as read it.
Right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on with us. We really appreciate you telling us our story.
Thanks.
Hey students! ASCSU is your student body government. To find out more, come visit us in room 109 of the LSC.
Lose anything on campus recently? The CSU Police Department have seen an increase in theft this semester compared to others. One professor in the Natural Resources building fell victim to this crime.
We'll always lock it.
A phrase that CSU professors have become all too familiar with.
I think we're all sort of alarmed by that reality.
And CSU isn't exempt from the other problems that are out there in the world, theft being one of them.
A professor left her natural resources office open and unattended to clean out a lab just down the hall.
Personal property and credit cards were taken.
This security video and used credit card information led to the arrest of 41-year-old David Getsky, seen here.
Mr. Getsky had been arrested and subsequently convicted of burglarizing, I'm not sure the exact location, but he was convicted of second-degree burglary at CSU in 2009.
It's just this easy to break into an office and steal personal belongings.
It's a big breach of privacy, particularly because, these are like office spaces. This is where we work and come every day. And to think that, you can't leave for a moment is unfortunate.
Police remind us to stay aware of our surroundings and lock up.
To be cognizant that although we try to create a safe and secure environment, crime does happen here just like anywhere else.
David Getsky was charged with second-degree burglary, 2 charges of theft, criminal impersonation, and identity theft. Thanks for joining us on Colorado Inns. Make sure to tune in to our next episode, which is a week from Thursday. Have a good night.
2 outs with a runner on first base. Now the big guy comes up with that, hitting .342 with 92 RBIs and 36 homers.
Chill raw and prepared foods promptly. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Students are responsible for all CTV content, therefore they bear responsibility for the decisions they make. CTV is not an official program of Colorado State University, but is produced by an independent, nonprofit corporation using the name CTV pursuant to a license granted by CSU.